But is it the same old England? That is the question some people are asking after today. Steve Borthwick announced a squad for a 3-day training camp in Brighton, and that is what I'm going to dig into in this video. Thank you for watching. I'm Tim. This is Egg Chasers, and hopefully, if I haven't already, this will be the video where I earn your subscription. I would very much appreciate it. Hit like, share, and leave your comments as well. What do you make of this? Well, let's go through the squad. Steve Borthwick has named 15 forwards. 13 were involved in the game at the weekend against Wales. And the two that are involved, again, are Dave Ribbons, second row, and Ben Earl in the back row. That seems absolutely fine. No one's got any surprises or concerns there. Maybe Mako Vanapola leading a bit of a charmed life at the minute when you've got players like Valrapava Ruskin who could be involved. But that's a conversation for another day. And in fact, that's a conversation I've had many times already. So I've almost given up on that one. As for the back line, well, here it gets interesting. 11 backs named. And Johnny May is one of them. Max Malins is injured. Now, Steve Borthwick has said, what was the quote? He said, quote, reduced fallow week squad numbers, injuries, and our wish for some players to have valuable game minutes with their clubs means the squad has a slightly different feel to it. He's not wrong. Max Malins, he's injured. He will rejoin the squad, and the full squad will get back together on Sunday. Whilst Max Malins is rehabbing, Johnny May has come in. And I think some people have pointed out, no Caden Murley this time? What's going on there? Is he just forgotten about? Adam Radwan? Are these players to be ignored? Just on the Johnny May point, I wouldn't read too much into it. I think Malins will come back in. Johnny May will not start. And also, he's not on this list of names, but Manu Tuolangi is also training with the squad. And what I read into that is not that Johnny May is now going to be England's winger, or Manu Tuolangi is going to be in the centre for England for that matter, but Steve Borthwick is just thinking these are guys of proven international pedigree, not at that point right now, but they're massive experience, and were they to go away and have a great time playing for their club for the rest of the season, they would absolutely be in consideration for a World Cup squad. So keep them involved. That's as I see it. But I do feel that Tommy Freeman, Max Malins, Anthony Watson and co are all above the pecking order. So I wouldn't read too much into that. The interesting part comes, doesn't it, with the choice of George Ford in, Marcus Smith out. This is the big story. What do you make of this? Leave your comments. You see, it feels significant to me. Steve Borthwick has stressed this is just because he would like Marcus Smith to get some game minutes for Harlequins, and they've got their big game at Twickenham this weekend in front of a big crowd. So that's a boost for that, and that may have played into it. Go and have a game in front of a Twickenham crowd and go and play well. Equally, if that is the justification, you could argue, well, George Ford's only just coming back from a long-term injury. How come he doesn't need to get game time for his club? He's only played a couple of games in like a year or more than a year. So what's going on there? Well, I think again, my thought on this is that it could just be exactly as Steve Borthwick says, because Marcus Smith does need game minutes because he's been used for the grand total of 10 minutes over his last two games for England against Italy and Wales. 15 seconds at the weekend, in fact, one touch of the ball. George Ford is going to be in the World Cup squad, if fit. So for a 3-day training camp in Brighton, let's get him involved. Get him up to speed with what we're currently doing. It doesn't need to be read into any more than that. It could be absolutely how it is. And Marcus Smith could well be on the bench next week against France. I do think it is more significant than that, though. And I think this is a sign of things to come. And do you know what? I'm okay with that. And this is why I asked the question, is it a new head coach, but the same old England? And if that is the case, I don't see why anybody is surprised, because Steve Borthwick and Eddie Jones have worked together for years with England, with Japan. I think even with Saracens when Steve Borthwick was a player and Eddie Jones was a coach there. So these are two guys that know each other well, think very similarly in terms of their rugby, have differences as well. And Steve Borthwick, in fact, has been really critical of Eddie Jones, saying that there was so much that England had to work on. And I'm also actually really encouraged by Steve Borthwick's start in charge. I talked about this in the reviews of the England-Wales game at the weekend. I think there is massive amount of criticism for the way England are playing, for the players that are involved, Owen Farrell, namely. I think Steve Borthwick's start has been a really good one. He's 3 games in, and he is layering up slowly the way that England are playing. And anyone that's surprised by the way that England are playing haven't paid attention to Steve Borthwick's career as a coach. Because whether it's with his England teams or... there you go, bromance. Let's get into that in just a minute. But with Leicester Tigers, Steve Borthwick won the Premiership by doing exactly what he's now doing for England. So let's talk about this then. Ford Farrell, will we see a return of it? I would not be surprised, and I've been talking about it on videos, that I wouldn't be surprised if this is how England line up at the World Cup. And a lot of people are thinking, I thought we left that in the past. I wanted the reins to be handed to Marcus Smith. That's clearly not going to happen with Steve Borthwick. And a lot of people are quite frustrated about that. They think Marcus Smith is the future, the golden one, is our answer to Finn Russell, who's going to unlock defences. And I'm sure long-term Marcus Smith can do that. I know that this pair works. And I'm okay with it. I love George Ford. I think, hey, tell me what you think about this in the comments. These are England's best 2 fly halves. And when they play together, they work beautifully. So I think there's still a valid argument, yes, for George Ford at 10 and Owen Farrell at 12, with, at the moment, Ollie Lawrence at 13. I think the choice is less, is it going to be Smith or Farrell at 10? Or even is it going to be Ford and Farrell at 10? I think is it going to be Henry Slade or George Ford? And those may be the 2 ways that England line up. Farrell, Lawrence, Slade, like we saw against Wales and Italy, or Ford, Farrell, Lawrence, as it currently stands. That's as I see it. I'm just going to remind you of something, because I can feel the anger coming through the screen from people that don't want to go back there. Do you not remember the World Cup semi-final in 2019? But even before we get there, do you not remember the world record equaling number of wins that England had in a row? What was it, 18? Who was playing 10 and 12 through that run? George Ford and Owen Farrell. This game, the best performance by an England team that I've seen since probably 2003. Probably. I can't think of another. There might be another one off the top of my head, but it's up there, isn't it? This World Cup semi-final performance. Who was starting 10? George Ford. Who was starting 12? Owen Farrell. It works. And just watch this opening attack. So I think TJ Perenara, or Aaron Smith, is going to kick the ball. Just watch England's attack, how potent they are, and how well Owen Farrell and George Ford work together. With, outside them, they had Manu Tuilagi. Ollie Lawrence has got a lot of the attributes that Manu Tuilagi brought, and a few others as well. He's got more to his game than just being one-dimensional. The way England attacked with the... And go back and watch the whole game, I urge you, because the way that England worked with the 2 pivots, Ford and Farrell had each other's back. I showed you that picture of the 2 of them smiling and hugging each other. They're both from rugby league stock. Their families know each other. They're both from the same part of the world. They clearly get on amazingly well. And that relationship, they're both incredible players in their own right. That relationship comes out on the pitch. Just watch the fluency of England when they have these 2 in charge. There you go. I think that's Ford out the back to Farrell. And the ball's going coast to coast. And with the massive importance of the kicking game in world rugby, not just with England, but Steve Borthwick especially. This was just dynamite rugby. With the importance of the kicking game, and that's not just talking about Steve Borthwick, although Steve Borthwick and Manu Tuilagi is about to score, isn't he? Here we go. Oh, so good. So good. The kicking game is massive. Steve Borthwick emphasises that with the way he sets his teams up, but it's important for international rugby right now. And a couple of stats for you from the England-Wales game. England had the most amount of territory gained by kicks, and they had the fewest number of rucks in their own half, which should tell you everything about the way that England are going to set up their team to play. They're going to play it in the other half of the pitch, and then when it's on, then they go. And George Ford and Owen Farrell, two great rugby brains that do dovetail together, I think still has merit. And I know how much stick Owen Farrell gets. His goal kicking is not good. And interestingly, I don't know if you remember, but in this World Cup semi-final, Owen Farrell got a little bit of a knock during the game and didn't feel right. And what happened? George Ford took over the goal kicking and did really well. I think he definitely got a couple of pens. Maybe he kicked all of the penalties to take it up to 19 points. But that also could indicate another benefit for England, that if one of them's not having a great day with their goal kicking, Owen Farrell at the minute, he's got his backup. Equally, George Ford could end up being the number 10 and it could still be Lawrence and Slade. I'm on board for that as well. But George Ford is a world-class fly half. He's been injured for ages. When Leicester were 11th in the Premiership and they should have gone down that couple of years, 12th, finished bottom of the league, he was incredible, even in a losing team. He was massively influential in a team that went on and won the Premiership. He's been massively influential for England in some of their finest performances. The whitewashing of Australia, the win in the World Cup semi-final. He wasn't starting in the World Cup final, and who knows what might have been. No, South Africa would still have won it. So I'm on board with it, and I think Marcus Smith has got great days ahead of him, but I think pragmatically, trying to build for a World Cup in 6 months' time, personally, I don't think Marcus Smith is the man to hold the reins for that challenge. And I'm all in on George Ford being in the England squad and potentially starting for England. And I'm not at any point going to stop saying Owen Farrell is a world-class rugby player, and I love that he's involved as well. Say what you want to say about that in the comments, but that's just my opinion. You may well have a different one, and I would love to hear it. And like every conversation in a rugby clubhouse, we can thrash it out just down here. And I really appreciate you watching, and I hope you'll hit subscribe and stay tuned for the next video.